Hello, and welcome back to Behind the Cues, the podcast where we dive into all things theatre, from the magic happening on stage to the chaos backstage to the unforgettable moments experienced from the audience. I'm Tom, your host, and today we're talking ghosts of theatre. I remember growing up watching Most Haunted with the family and getting spooked by almost every episode. I also grew up in a house where we had strange happenings almost daily. I'm talking bins flying across the room, shadow people, and one time my parents saw a helium balloon walk itself around our living room. Whether you're a believer or skeptic, stick around because today's episode is nothing short of a little spooky. But of course, this wouldn't be a theatre podcast if I spoke about home hauntings. Oh no, we are talking old theatres. Now, theatres are full of stories. Some are hilarious, some are emotional, and some are a little harder to explain. Have you ever walked into an old theatre and instantly felt like you weren't alone? Probably because you're with other audiences, but we're talking after the audience have gone home and you're the only person left in the theatre. Maybe it was the creaking balcony that spooked you, the flickering work lights, or that strange feeling you get standing in the wings after everyone else has gone home. Theatres have always carried a certain mystery with them. And with decades, sometimes centuries of performances, legends, and late nights, it's probably no surprise that so many people believe that they're haunted. So, for today's episode, we're stepping into the dark side of theatre history. We're talking ghost lights, those single lights left glowing on stage after the audiences have gone home, and the superstitions and traditions surrounding them. We'll get into stories of unexplained footsteps backstage, shadowy figures spotted in empty auditoriums, and eerie encounters shared by actors, stage crew, musicians, and audience members from theatres across the world. So, whether you're listening alone at night, backstage before a show, or during your walk home after rehearsal, settle in, keep the ghost light on, and let's get into some spooky theatre stories. One of the biggest and probably most famous theatre traditions is the ghost light. If you've ever been in a theatre really late at night after everyone's gone home, chances are you've seen one before. It's usually just a single light or lamp left in the middle of the stage while the theatre is empty and dark. Now, the actual practical reason for ghost lights is pretty simple. Theatres are honestly dangerous in the dark. There's cables everywhere, bits of set sticking out, stairs, trapdoors, orchestra pits, and if someone's working late backstage, the ghost light helps them see where they're going without having to turn all the stage lights back on. So realistically, it's there to stop people from falling into a pit or smacking into scenery at 2 a.m. But obviously, theatre people being theatre people, there's also a much creepier meaning behind it. The exact origin of the ghost light isn't fully known, but the tradition goes back to years and years. Way before modern lighting, back when theatres would have been lit with candles or gas lamps. So once a performance ended, the building would be completely pitch black. Leaving a light on overnight started as a safety thing, but over time people started creating stories around it. And one of the biggest theatre superstitions is that every theatre has a ghost. Apparently, the ghost light is left on so spirits can perform on stage after everyone's gone home. Some people think it welcomes them in, others think it keeps them calm so they don't mess with productions or the people working in the theatre. And honestly, when you hear some of the stories people have from theatres, you do start questioning things a bit. There's loads of stories about people hearing footsteps backstage when nobody else is there, seeing figures sitting in the audience, or hearing doors slam and things moving on their own. The weird thing is, though, most people who believe in theatre ghosts don't actually think they're bad or dangerous. Theatres are usually seen as happy places, full of creativity, music, performers, and memories. So people think if spirits are there, they're probably just attached to the building. That being said, absolutely not for me. I hate being alone backstage anyway. And once you start thinking about ghost stories, every little noise suddenly becomes terrifying, especially in older theatres where everything creaks naturally anyway. You'll hear one bang in the distance and immediately convince yourself that there's someone standing in the wings watching you. But whether people believe in ghosts or not, ghost lights are still used pretty much everywhere. They're a little less common in the UK, but there are some small theatres that still use them. Even now, with modern lighting and safety systems, theatres still leave them on because it's become such a huge part of theatre culture and tradition. And honestly, I kind of love that. At the end of the night, after all the chaos of the show, everyone leaves, the audience goes home, backstage goes quiet, and then there's just one single light left glowing in the middle of the stage. It's creepy, but also weirdly comforting at the same time. And I think that's why ghost lights are still such a massive part of theatre. They're practical, they're historical, and they add to that strange, magical feeling theatres seem to have once everyone's gone home. One of the strangest things about theatre ghost stories is how detailed they get. It's rarely just someone saw a shadow once. A lot of theatres have stories that have been passed down through generations of performers and crew. After a while, the ghost almost becomes part of the theatre's identity. Now, some ghosts are apparently so well known that the staff fully expect to experience something at some point. People will talk about hearing footsteps crossing the stage when nobody's there, seats suddenly folding down in empty auditoriums, dressing room doors opening by themselves, or hearing someone calling their name backstage, only to realize the building is empty. And weirdly, a lot of theatre ghosts are described as being harmless, almost like they're just continuing life in theatre after death. There's this idea in theatre culture that if someone loved performing enough or spent enough of their time in theatre, part of them never really leaves. So some ghosts are said to sit in the audience watching rehearsals, stand in the wings during performances, or wander backstage late at night. Some theatres even have rules around the ghosts. In certain venues, actors leave a seat empty in the audience for a resident spirit. Others apparently avoiding using specific dressing rooms because too many strange things have happened in them. There are also stories of actors thanking ghosts after a good show, if nothing went wrong technically, which is honestly both wholesome and terrifying at the same time. One thing that comes up a lot is how old theatres feel at night. During a show, they're so loud, they're so busy and full of energy, but once everyone leaves, the atmosphere completely changes. You suddenly notice every creak, every distant bang, every flickering light. Of course, old buildings naturally make a noise anyway, but when you already know all the ghost stories attached to the theatre, your imagination starts doing overtime. And I think that's part of why theatre stories survive so well. Theatre is already built around storytelling, emotion, history, and performance. These buildings hold decades of memories, thousands of actors, audiences, musicians, and productions passing through them. So when strange things happen, people naturally attach meaning to them. Whether the ghosts are real or not, the stories become part of the theatre itself. And honestly, I think every theatre person has at least one moment they can't fully explain. So I'm going to tell you a couple of chilling stories now that I found online. Brace yourself because they may end up making you feel like you're being watched. This first one is from Alex Borsma, which is from the Epigram of Bristol. It's like a news outlet sort of thing. And this one's called The Lavender Scented Theatre. One really famous theatre ghost in the UK is the spirit of Sarah Macready, who supposedly haunts the Bristol Old Vic, which is actually the oldest continuously running theatre in the English speaking world. And honestly, this story feels like something straight out of a horror film. Sarah was the theatre manager and actress in the 1800s and was known for basically dedicating her life to theatre. She managed the venue for nearly 20 years after her husband died and apparently cared massively about the actors, crew, and productions happening there. But according to theatre legend, she never really left. People who work at the Bristol Old Vic have claimed for years that they've seen a woman wandering around the theatre wearing an old fashioned white or black crinoline dress. Others say they smell lavender perfume out of nowhere, which is supposedly Sarah's signature scent. And there's some genuinely really creepy stories attached to her. One of the most famous ones is about a security guard who was alone in the theatre at night with his dog. Apparently, the dog suddenly froze and started growling at absolutely nothing. Then the guard heard a woman's voice telling him to get out before being completely overwhelmed by the smell of lavender. There's also lots of stories from actors and staff who say they've seen a woman sitting in the audience during rehearsals, only for her to completely disappear seconds later. Some performers have even admitted that they hate being alone backstage because the atmosphere there gets so unsettling at night. And what I find really interesting is that people at the theatre don't really talk about Sarah like she's some evil spirit. She's almost become part of the building itself, like an unofficial member of staff who is still watching over the theatre. And all these years later, which makes it somehow creepier. While I'm recording this, guys, there's creaks and stuff all over this house, and it's kind of creeping me out. And they are natural, like creaking, like it's just a house settling. But when I'm reading these like spooky stories and I'm hearing a creak behind me, I'm like, someone's here. But no, they're not. Okay, let's get back into it. TSS Alex, Reddit. The Peeing Ghost. Back in the 80s, I worked in a theatre where we knew who the ghost was. ELT's resident ghost was Nicholas Rowrich, who had been involved with the building from its inception. Most times, Nicholas could be found sitting in the balcony watching when we worked late at night. This was especially odd since before renovations, the only seats in the balcony were for the light board operator and the stage manager, and he wasn't at either location. He could also be spotted when we set out the ghost light, waving goodnight when we called out to him. Only once did I encounter him outside of his usual haunt in the balcony. I was the technical director at the time and had stayed late to get some quiet work done. Prior to leaving, and my 1.5 hour subway ride, I went to use the facilities, if you know what I mean. Front of house on a stairway leading to the balcony. I was the only person in the theatre, so imagine my surprise while sitting in the stall to hear the bathroom door open, someone walk over to the urinal and relieve himself. Through the crack of the door, I could see a body there, but no feet to support it. Until that night, I never knew ghosts use the toilet. The theatre went out of business in 1989, and the space is now used as a church. I often wonder if Nicholas can still be found there, and if so, how the staffers explain him away. London West End Theatre website. Theatre Royal, Drury Lane. The Man in Grey. The Theatre Royal, Drury Lane is referred to as the most haunted theatre in London, and with more than 350 years of history, it is easy to see why. The most famous ghost would be the Man in Grey, who appears as a figure in an 18th century cloak with a powdered wig and a dry corn hat. This ghost has been spotted by audience members, and at times entire casts, gliding across the upper circles before disappearing into a wall. When workers refurbished the theatre back in the 1870s, they unearthed a skeleton with a dagger wound behind that wall, which was wrapped in grey cloth. Many believe that this unfortunate individual is the man in grey. However, his presence is not feared and is celebrated as a positive omen, no less than a promise of good luck for a successful show. Another daily ghost includes Joseph Grimaldi, the significant clown who contributed to the story of British pantomime theatre, who likes to playfully kick actors and staff. Others claim to see a white floating face in the wings. Also haunting the space forever is the ghost of the comedian Dan Leno, and although he is no longer physically with us, his laughter remains alive and well. Okay, so this next one is actually from a couple of years ago, and it's from a TikToker that I stumbled across. And his name is Bailey the Bailey. He was working as the theatre's operational manager for a theatre somewhere in America. I can't remember where. He's had so many crazy experiences that he's caught on video, such as toilets flushing by themselves, dressing room lights being turned off and on with no one else but him in the building. However, the most chilling video I saw from him has quite literally kept me speechless. During his lockup of the theatre, one of the working lights goes off on stage. Now, he hasn't switched it off yet, but it still plunges into darkness. Obviously, with the single ghost light left lighting the stage. With the low lit auditorium staring back at him, or was it just the auditorium? As he gets to the stage, he shows proof of the ghost light and hears noise come from the upper balcony or circle and spins the phone around. And you can see as he zooms in what looks like two figures sitting, staring. I don't know about you, but I'd nope it straight out of there and never look back, especially after seeing what Bailey has experienced in theatre. If any of you want to see the clip, I will post it on my Instagram and TikTok for you to see for yourself. I'm saddened to also tell you, Bailey the Bailey's page has since been turned into the official page of the theatre, kind of leading me to believe that it may have been a publicity stunt, but I'm not sure. The way he talked about all of his experiences, I don't know, they just seemed so genuine, and you could tell that he was rather scared by a lot of the occurrences. I absolutely love hearing ghost stories, but living them yourself is a whole new level of scary. The only one I really have is basically seeing what Bailey saw. Someone on the balcony of my local theatre when I know for a fact there was only 2 or 3 of us in the building and all of us were all accounted for. So who was it? It also doesn't make sense because this place hasn't always been a theatre. It used to be a bingo hall. Whatever remaining energy is there once walked the bingo hall back in 1983 or previously 1914 when it was a picture theatre. No amount of researching shows any deaths in the theatre. The history is weirdly hard to look up, but I'd absolutely love to know more about the Savoy Theatre, Tonarabo. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of Behind the Cues. I honestly think theatre is one of the only places where people can talk so casually about ghosts and everyone just sort of accepts it. Like, if somebody told you their office building was haunted, you'd probably think they were joking. But in theatre, people will fully say things like, oh yeah, that's just the ghost in the dressing rooms, and carry on with their day like it's completely normal. But I think that's part of what makes theatre so fascinating. These buildings hold up so much history. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of performers, crew members, musicians, and audience members have passed through them over the years. Every show leaves something behind: memories, energy, stories. And maybe that's why theatres feel so alive, even when they're completely empty. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, there's definitely something strange about being alone in theatre at night. Once the audiences have gone home and everything goes quiet, every little sound feels amplified. After researching all these stories, I genuinely don't think I'll ever look at ghost lights the same way again. What started as a simple safety light somehow become one of the creepiest, most interesting traditions in theatre. And I also really love the idea that even now, with modern theatres and all the technology we have, people still keep those old traditions alive. Whether it's leaving a ghost light on, refusing to say the M word backstage, or greeting the theatre ghost when you walk in alone at night. There's something really nice about how connected theatre people are to the history of spaces they work in. And honestly, I do think that every theatre person has had at least one story they can't fully explain. Maybe it's hearing footsteps when nobody's there, seeing someone sitting in the audience during rehearsal, or just getting that horrible feeling that you're not alone backstage. Even the biggest skeptics usually have one moment that makes them stop and think, right, that was a bit weird. If you've got your own spooky theatre stories, paranormal experiences, or weird backstage moments, definitely send them my way because I would absolutely love to do another episode like this, especially if you worked in old theatres because somehow those stories are always the creepiest. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Behind the Cues. It genuinely means so much that people listen to me ramble about theatre traditions, backstage chaos, and apparently now theatre ghosts. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure you follow the podcast, leave a review, and share it with your theatre friends, especially the ones who refuse to be backstage alone after a show. And next time you're in a dark theatre and you see that single light glowing in the middle of the stage, maybe don't look too close into the audience, just in case. I'll speak to you in the next episode. Until then, keep the ghost light on. Bye-bye.